how to. Oh man, that music was great.
No
Sure you
doubt.
keep it going.
Welcome everyone to yet another. It's not an episode. It's a live Q&A. I'm Matt Fanslow, and really the star of the show is here, the star of the industry, Brin Kline.
Thank you for having me. I don't know why you had me here. I don't really know
Because
the
we need
answers.
somebody
I
to
don't
carry
have
the show.
answers.
We need somebody to carry the show,
The
and
only
somebody
thing
to actually answer the questions.
I don't know answers. I mean, the only thing I know is what I learned from TikTok Reels or Facebook Reels. And everybody else knows those same things, I think. So, but we'll try.
I did, before we get rolling too much, I did want to compliment you on that must be your bedroom. You got your ASE certs up top, some
Yeah,
random photos. You have a Keurig in your bedroom?
No,
Your dresser is a toolbox?
I keep all my trophy in my room. No, this is a waiting room office area.
You have a waiting room in your house? I believe it. Visitors, I get
it.
Yeah.
You know,
that's cool.
Can't just let them through right away. They have to sit. What do they call this? Sitting room? Like,
I mean, that's in the old days. They had a sitting room.
Yeah.
Yeah, yours is like an interrogation room. They got to pass tests and get sprayed with Lysol. So, do you want to answer any questions?
Do we have any questions?
I see one. I can make up some if you want, but Curtis Robbins asks, if you were on a budget and wanted to start teaching yourself how to use a scope, what would you recommend? I'm guessing what would you recommend? I'm leaning towards the U-Scope Master Kit.
I don't like the U-Scope. I'm probably the only one in the industry, and I don't mean any disrespect. I just don't like having a single channel. I think very soon after you start using a scope and getting past the learning curve, you really want at least a second channel just so you can see the action reaction, see the input, you see the response kind of thing. Plus, when you're new, I think there's so few buttons because the thing is so small. It has to be. And so you have to kind of learn the interface and how to work around it. I just, I don't know how to answer it. Honestly, people say get something cheap and it'll work for you. Once you start using a good scope, it's so frustrating using anything else. And I believe buying a good scope out of the gate can oftentimes help beginners just actually get through the learning curve instead of giving up. That's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, and budget, I don't know what that means. Like, what is the budget? How high or low, whatever that is, does that mean? For some people like me, $500 is a lot of money. For somebody like Brin, $5,000 is that probably fell out of his pocket getting out of his car. But I tend to agree with Brin, not in the dislike of the U-Scope, but try to buy as much as you can. It's hard. It's very, very difficult not to recommend the Pico. And I get it. I'm linked to Pico. I have a relationship with them, but I also use it. If I'm using a scope, it's usually using a Pico, but I also use the U-Scope a lot. I also use the Vantage Pro a lot. I'll go find a used Vantage Pro on Facebook Marketplace or eBay. So I guess I have nothing against the U-Scope. But to me, that might be for somebody a little more seasoned where you have a very specific purpose to grab that thing and go. Like it's very, very handy for testing stuff under the dash, or you just want to run out in the parking lot and make a quick test. Like you have an idea what's wrong with the car. You just want to look at one thing. But if you have to start getting into heavier diag and you're going to want multiple channels, now where's this budget fit? The last Vantage Pro I bought online was a beautiful, beautiful shape. I think I spent like $600, and that came with 2 batteries that were in okay shape. Of course, the charger, let's be honest, the really crap Snap-on test leads. They're horrific. And the one I got came with the I think a PDI low amp current probe for $600. That's tough to beat. That's 2 channels. It's
But
still
the
a
Vantage
very
Pro, is that the 5 partitions? 5 major partitions left to right, or was that the Vantage? I think that was the
that was probably
Vantage.
the Vantage. Vantage Pro, I believe, had more screen partitions, if that's what we're talking about, from
No,
the
I'm
the
sorry. I
screen
mean
buffer.
major divisions. Left to right time base sweep.
Oh, yeah, I would
I
swing
think it
more
had
than
5.
5.
Was it? One of them had
Yeah.
5. Carlos said Snap-on's good. I do tend to grab a Snap-on because it's integrated with a tablet. Until recently, the newest version, now the scope module is separate, which I think defeats the whole purpose of
One of
using
your
a Snap.
employees agrees with me, so really, mic drop.
I tried to tell him it was tomorrow night so he wouldn't be here.
He doesn't listen to you anyways, man.
Yeah.
When was he going to start today?
One thing to consider, though, speaking of budget, is first of all, the 4425A has been out a few years now, so there's still a lot of people wanting to go into that, and they're selling their 4425s pretty cheap, pretty good deals. But keep in mind, if you're starting out, you don't have to buy a kit at all. You can buy, contact companies like AES Wave and just get the scope, a USB, and some test leads, and you're probably looking at what, Matt, like $1,500 for a Pico.
Yeah, I
For
would say maybe even arguably less. Arguably, well, if we're talking new, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
so new, yes. Used, probably hovering around half, a little more maybe. Depending on what you have now. If you have absolutely nothing, do you got meter leads? Like if we're really trying to scrape here, you have meter leads that are banana or 4 millimeter. You can get BNC to banana jack adapters and just get by. Part of the budget thing here that also I wanted to talk about or mention. I guess we're assuming you're working for a shop, and where's the shop's involvement in this? If this is a piece of equipment which is proven time and time again to be a necessity for modern auto repair, where's their involvement? Would they help you out, or would they just buy it?
It's a good point. I think
You know what I
too
mean?
often we assume that they won't, and sometimes all it takes is just asking.
Right. You have an interest in it. It's in your wheelhouse. You're going to be doing some diag. You're going to go do some training, whether that's online, in person, both, all of it, hands on. Then it's very reasonable for the shop to step up and either just buy it for piece of shop equipment, or help subsidize it for you, whatever that means, and hopefully it's fair. And I don't know, I guess I don't buy into every shop's just out to screw over their tax, much less customers. So that would be an interesting to hear back from you, if you could approach somebody at the shop and see if they'd be willing to help you out, or instead of trying to buy just what you can afford, start looking at buying something that will be like the cornerstone or a part of the cornerstone. I don't want to imply that an oscilloscope should be the cornerstone of your diagnostic equipment arsenal. It's clearly going to be a scan tool, but it's going to be very important in many different cases. So it should be a very big part of your arsenal. What involvement are they willing to take?
The other thing too, I'd like to mention, and I only mention this because um, it might be something that you already have and you're not even aware of, is Altel, the 919 and the Ultra come, their interface is a scope and a J2534 pass-through device. That scope is pretty dang good.
Yep.
If you happen, if you're in a shop and happen to have that and you're not even potentially realizing it, just be aware that that's a pretty dang good scope.
Yeah, and I just thought of it now. If the shop has a Modus or a Virus or Zeus, you already have a scope. So
Yeah,
just keep that in mind. And a fairly decent one, right?
yeah. Even if it's not
Um,
updated, the scope still works.
absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Cool.
All right. Now, probably the most important question we'll get tonight from Pedro Della Torre. How can I get my hair to look like Brin's?
Um, Laminate. Same thing they use on Ken dolls.
Yeah.
Dapper Dan man.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but he's wearing his Clark Kent glasses, and I kid you not, if he takes them off, Superman.
What rice cooker would you
I
go?
liked your I liked your trailer you just did too. That was very
Yeah.
excited for that. I
No,
think that's coming out in July. You're gonna be a star.
I don't
You're
remember.
already a star in the automotive
I'd like
repair
to answer
world, but
Bob
now
Hype's question
national.
about rice cookers. What kind of rice cooker would you buy?
Uncle Rogers. Game set match.
The
All
shop
right.
would likely get the benefits of the tax write-off for the
Noah
purchase versus take.
Al Hamad says he needs help. Yeah, I know. I don't have that license to help you the way you need. Sorry, man. Uh, Chris agrees with you, which is no surprise. That's a good argument. Bren, spending some money will kind of force you to want to learn the tool and utilize it. I like my U-scope personally also, but you make a great point.
I like to use scope, but I think, like you were saying, it's not your first scope. It's something, as you're already kind of a scope user, you would use that in lieu of like a DVOM or something,
Yeah.
I
I was
think.
kind of thinking about this in my mind. A lot of us should have U-scopes, but usually it's the shop or one of us. If you're like me, starting out buying a lot of equipment, you have, for me it was a Pico.
You're
Somebody
just
else might
starting
be an
out.
Autel. When I was starting out,
Uh,
everybody thinks I'm just starting out when they watch me work on cars. They're pretty sure I'm very novice, and I don't blame them. It's a lot of guesswork,
well,
and you guess enough, you get it right. And but to me, it's the perfect scenario for the U-scope is the shop already owns whatever that is, a Pico, Snap-on, um, Autel, ATS, whatever that is. The U-scope is what the tech buys for their own personal use to just run out and do a quick check. You know, I hate to say like an initial inspection, but you kind of you got an idea what might be wrong. You're just going to run out and quick check. Like this thing doesn't crank over. Crank sensor is super easy to get to, or the circuit itself is easy to get to somewhere. I'm just going to quick plug in and look. Do I have a crank signal? Nope. It's like, oh yeah, all right. Now we got to push it in and go get the big guns. Or I'm going to do something under the dash. That's where I tend to use the U-scope the most is under the dash because I don't not necessarily looking at like relationship type stuff, signal relationship stuff. Ooh,
sweet.
somebody's trying to start something here. What do we do when shops are charging for diagnostics but not doing any testing and just what part stores already do for free?
Where did that come from? Do you know? Not that it
The
matters. Just
column over here says starred. Who, I'm
uh,
gonna blame Falco. That sounds like a Falco question to me. I don't know who it is.
well, Want me to go? Let's see.
Well, yeah, I want you
Um,
to take over.
that's a tough question, actually, because you know, you want to say that you're offering, you have something to actually offer. I think that's part of the problem is shop. Unfortunately, there's a lot of shops that don't really know how to actually work through a problem and pinpoint, the problem and offer a solution. So, we argue all the time that more shops need to charge for diag. It makes it easier for us, for those of us that do try to be very thorough and charge for diagnosis. Um, but what do they do when they don't really know? Like, I, I guess as a business owner that has to deal with customers that are conditioned after going to shops that don't charge for diag, is that I guess I kind of appreciate that they're charging for it, even if there's not much of a real value there, just because it makes it easier for the motoring public to be conditioned for paying for something as opposed to getting it free. That's kind of, I mean,
Yeah.
that's one way of looking at it, I guess.
What interests me um is what would be the perspective of this question? Meaning the author of it. Are you working in a shop that's charging for diagnostics but really doesn't do any? They just consult a database or load up the parts canon. They have some chart that I don't, where the DTC leads directly to a part. If that's true, please send that to me. The email is mattfonslowpodcast@gmail.com. I would really like that. The other thing is, do you know a shop, or you used to work for a shop that did that? And I don't know what you're gonna really do. If you're familiar with the shop owner, manager, whatever, I suppose you could try to have a conversation with them. I doubt it'll go anywhere. The the best thing you can do is provide data, because that's something they can't. If they're just guessing or using a database, they have no data to provide. So if you're going to charge diag and you're using, some scan data, maybe you have a recording, maybe you just got some screenshots, you got your scope out, even if, U scope, picoscope, whatever, screenshots of the scope capture, maybe a known good waveform to compare it to. Like, you're showing the test results either using your DVI or just your phone to take a bunch of photos and text it to your service advisor to show, or text it to the shop, email it to the shop so they can show it on a display. You're giving them something tangible for what you did. So if you're saying I'm charging you X amount of dollars, I would advise you not to talk time, just dollars. And for this many dollars, these are the tests that we performed, and these are the results. And that is why we want to do either another battery of tests for X amount of dollars, or we want to replace this component, or the diagnostic process, the analysis led to the problem. I found the corroded connector. Here's a photo of it. Now it's just, X amount of dollars to repair it or replace it, whatever. I think that's ultimately how you're going to combat that, because then they can go wherever they want and then, okay, we're going to pull the code and feed it into a database or replace based off code. Okay. If they come to your shop and they get all this information and then they go back to that shop and it's like, okay, why am I paying you all this money? Like, what did you do? What do they have? I suppose they could say, we fixed the car. We fixed the car, didn't we? Pay up. Or the client's kind of starting to think like, wow, okay, the other shop charged, but they gave me all this stuff. I don't know what it means, but I know they did something.
What do you think about offering a guarantee, a diagnostic or diagnosis guarantee? I mean, I guess to your point, we're not really charging for a diagnosis. We're charging for a series of tests that we need to
Yep.
do to perform, to pinpoint or come to the conclusion that we need to help them resolve their concern. But I guess if the customer were to allow you to get to, the point where you have pinpointed the problem, what do you think about offering a guarantee? I mean, because if you think
It's
about
great
shops that
until
are
it isn't.
charging, yeah, well, shops that are charging for diag that aren't doing diag, I mean, they're they're probably doing statistical diag. They probably have some kind of database that they're using is to 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 make some kind of recommendation. So obviously, they're probably gonna to miss the target a little more than a shop that is doing thorough diagnosis. So the shops that are doing thorough diagnosis, I've heard people say we guarantee our diagnosis. You know, to me, it's too complex. The problems that we see are too complex sometimes to guarantee a diagnosis. It just seems kind of weird, a weird thing to do, sort of. But it's something that I guess if anybody were to do it, shops that are actually being thorough with their diagnostic work are in a better position to do so.
Yeah, it's a great idea until it isn't. And I guess I'm thinking about like my shop when we're doing a bunch of work on some of these collision vehicles or flood vehicles. There's so much wrong with them. There's like layers to it. That would be very difficult. Now, granted, those are for other companies. They're not for regular clients. But even at that, sometimes we get cars in from, hours away. They found you however they found you, and they got your name. And so they're traveling a long ways to have you look at their vehicle or your shop look at this vehicle. It's probably not going to be a piece of cake. And is it going to be one thing? It's rough to guarantee. I would think backing up what you're doing would be much more value adding than you throw out a guarantee that you may not be able to stand behind. But then again, if it's really 99% of the time, you're right. Your testing takes you to the correct issue, and
Well,
you
I mean, I
review
think
that.
even if we're not saying we're going to guarantee our work, if we do make a mistake, I mean, if the other shops are like me, like us that are thorough with our diagnosis, I'd like to think that we're going to do the right thing. That didn't fix it. We were wrong, and we see where we were wrong, kind of thing. Bob says doctors don't guarantee their diagnosis. That's a good point. I wanted to come back really quick to Curtis Robbins after you're done. I didn't mean to switch gears
Oh
on
no, I just keep coming back to, or not coming back to. It's just I keep thinking of all these different scenarios where this could really backfire on you legitimately, and the guarantee, if all of a sudden you've really followed a proper diagnostic process and you came to a conclusion, just say for conversation's sake, you have two modules that don't talk and you're really down to it's one or the other, and it's rough to figure out which one.
Yeah,
They're
I
both
think that.
pointing at each other. Now, granted, you could go to the client and just say, hey, we're down to these two, so what's the diagnosis? Both of them? But it may only need
Well,
one. You want to roll the dice. And I'm just thinking of the other stuff where it's, the car doesn't start and you run into a couple of layers of issues where this is absolutely bad categorically, but it didn't fix the car. And I'm saying, I know it's rare. Like I'm not trying to just make an argument about stuff that is extremely rare. That's where you have to start considering, the benefit analysis, I guess. How often is this going to be an issue where you provide the guarantee, you're more than willing to eat it on the ones that you don't even, I hate to say, even make a mistake. Like the ones you make a mistake on, guarantee or not, you should stand behind it. You should say like, oh no, we screwed up.
yeah.
The engine was misfiring and we slammed a coil in it, and oh yeah, it's got low compression. You
Don't
should
get me
stand
wrong.
behind
I
that.
I've been asked this by clients, and it's my thought process is the same way. It's too much complexity to really say, yeah, I guarantee the diagnosis for all the things that you mentioned. But what you're referring to, I think, is no different than any other job that we have to communicate to the customer. Is there are variables that are outside of our control. If service information doesn't provide us, we have to kind of create our own test plans. We have to kind of, at some point, the limitation is the fact that we don't. That's usually once you get to the point where you're pretty efficient with diagnosis, usually your limitations are the fact that you don't have information. You run out of information at some point. And I think, or to your point, where the two modules are not communicating, if you feel truthfully that you've done everything you could do to determine that it's a problem within this area that has to be communicated. And I think if it's done well, clients are going to understand where you're coming from with it. But I'm not suggesting we need to. I was just thinking that was a kind of a good backup question to his question.
It's an interesting thought, right? I mean, that's the whole point is, what do we do about these other shops that are doing this? And it's what they're doing is essentially nefarious. It's not being honest. If you are charging somebody for a diagnostic, which is kind of misuse of the word, you're should be charging for an analysis. You're charging for testing. And I think that in by itself opens up kind of the door on an issue where too often shops are selling diagnostics as the result. You're paying me however much money for a result, not the test result, for a fixed car, rather than you're paying me this amount of money for a test, a battery of tests, a process that we've put together for this specific issue on this specific vehicle or platform or something like that. And if it's marketed more like that, that's more accurate, easier for a customer to process. And especially when you come to them with, well, we did all these tests, here's the results, screenshots, paper printed out, photos on your phone of the, whatever, a fuel pressure gauge or something like that. We did these tests. And after all that, we have to go in this direction. We're looking more in this direction for an issue, or this direction for an issue, or because of these results, we feel, or we believe, or we know that this needs this component. It will fix your car. And then here's this estimate for replacing that, and whatever that process is.
No, that is probably the biggest takeaway, is that everybody should be selling, I don't know how to word it. Honestly, I guess just selling tests. I mean, I've been using that term here forever. In fact, we have several different test packages, but it's still kind of an awkward thing. I don't know. I feel like it needs a little improvement, but not selling a fixed car, not selling a diagnosis. You're selling tests by an expert to analyze the situation and come up with the conclusions that's needed. But, kind of to Brian's point, I think we think of things in too deep when we're faced with those kinds of questions. And instead of managing to the rare cases, they say you should manage to the stuff that happens frequently. And to his point, he says, remember, the stuff we can't guarantee makes up like 1 to 2%.
Yep.
I would say that's true. And so you got to be careful not to make policies based off the rarities, I guess. Yep. Is what he's saying. And I don't disagree, but it's I don't know. I guess because I'm a technician and not a customer service person. When someone asks me like a question like that, it's hard. Research or testing, Carm says. It's both. I don't know if there's an or there. So you definitely have to. That's not a bad point, though. If you're talking terminology and selling testing packages, maybe research should be part of it. That terminology.
Research has to be part of it. That's part of your analysis. I think feathers get a little ruffled depending on what level of research we're doing. But research would be printing out a wiring schematic. Research would be description and operation of this system. Research would be technical service bulletins or preliminary bulletins. And manufacturers all have different names for that. That's all part of research, and we would do that. I mean, that's part of I think any solid diagnostic process. Strategy-based diagnostics, I think step one is customer interview, all that jazz, verify the concern, but then it's early on, you're looking for bulletins.
Yeah, it's definitely part of the process, and oftentimes, sometimes the majority of the process. But my question is, if we're dealing with a motoring public, is it helpful? And it's something I don't think we've done as far as using the verbiage in our testing packages, other than, maybe the labor description, but maybe it needs to be in the title, research and testing package 1 or something like that.
Yep.
Very cool, Michael. Similar to MRI and CAT scans, he says you're paying for those tests, not the diagnosis that come from those tests per se. Yeah, exactly. Going back to where is it? Curtis says that the shop has a Snap-on Virus that he wants something easy to set up and just play with that's his for $500. So my opinion, strongly, you have your hands on a very reputable, good, I think a good scope. I have nothing against Snap-on other than sample rate, I guess, mostly. And but that's definitely a scope you can use in a lot of situations. It will only let you down on a few, in my opinion, and those few are usually more advanced stuff. I would say save your money until your budget gets higher and get what you want. If you've already got your access to a Snap-on Virus.
Yep. Yeah, but in his scenario, that to me, the U scope makes a lot of sense. There is the 4-channel if he needs it, and this for quick testing, or like he's saying, probably at home, doing some random testing or just learning the scope. The scope's essentially the same. You're plotting voltage over time. And of course the interface is going to be different, and U-scope's got 12 divisions versus I suppose it depends on how you think about how the virus acquires sample points. Can get a little dicey on how many divisions it really is. Probably less important. I think it's important to make sure you're learning how to use the virus properly. To me, Snap-on users overwhelmingly are never taught because the truck guy doesn't know. I don't know that. I don't know what they call them anymore. They used to have tech systems people. I don't even know if they have them anymore.
Well, I know they did a few years ago, but I don't know about now. Yeah.
But it's rare that you get taught how to use the zoom out function, like how to fill the buffer up and then zoom out. And
I think Bob's right with the U scope. That's what I was trying to say earlier. It's just because it's so small, you have so few buttons, it's kind of hard to learn using a U scope. But again, if you have this Virus, maybe learning more on that, and I think U scope's more down the line. But most of the folks that we know that love U scopes are using them like in lieu of a DVOM, kind of like Matt was saying, in tight spots. And it's a good scope. I've just never, but in your situation, I think the user interface just takes a little bit of finagling. But
also for the $500 range, I guess it would be very difficult not to suggest jumping on Facebook Marketplace and seeing if you can pick yourself up a really good shape Vantage Pro. Similar function as the Modus, smaller, affordable. Bigger screen, of
He's
course. Meter
he's
functions,
well,
internal
he's
amps comes
buying
in
he's
really handy.
buying at that point he's buying what he already has access to, I guess. But you're just speaking to the thing, his point that he wants something that's his, I
Yes.
guess.
That's the way I took it. If somebody else
Yeah,
is using the
I get it.
Virus to pull codes and he wants to scope something,
Well,
that
it
he has
depends
his
on your
own scope.
relationship too with the boss, because in my shop, if somebody wants to borrow the Zeus or the Virus and just kind of play, it's a no-brainer. Hell yeah, take it home every night. I don't care.
I was thinking even just during the workday, somebody's
Yeah,
pulling codes. That's the only scan tool in the shop, the only scope in the shop. They're using it for, as a scan tool. Now you kind of want your own thing. Use scope, I get it. The price, it's pretty powerful. It really is. 12-bit and that little screen, super high res. The but also for that price point, if you can find yourself a Vantage Pro, which I keep saying over and over, but it's just that good. It's that freaking good of a tool that you have a pretty good 2-channel lap scope. It's got a bunch of meter functions.
well, let me ask you something, Matt. Maybe you know the answer. The
I
the
can make
old
one up.
Autel MP408s aren't even supported. They're not sold. I know that much, but I guess my question is, you should be able to use the new the software that they're using for the current scope, Autel scopes, on an MP408, right? Or do you know if it's supported
Well, even
anymore?
if you can't, you can just go get the software on a PC.
Yeah.
I have not tried to plug in 408 into my 909 or Ultra or anything. I don't see why it wouldn't work. I mean, I think it just
Yeah.
IDs it and away you go. If it's an
Yeah.
issue, the PC software is free, and
I
then
guess my
you're
question is
using
like,
a fairly capable scope.
that's what Brian was saying. Brian Pollock was saying, $500 pick up MP408. I know initially there was a lot of bugs that wasn't very valid tool initially, but the current scope software by Autel seems um, pretty comprehensive. I don't know if they support the 408 with the current software, but I would assume they would do, but I can't say that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost positive they do. That wouldn't make any sense to block everybody out.
Any other ones?
Any other what?
Questions?
I have lots of questions for you. One is an important one. We need your opinion. What do you think about the drones over Jersey?
I don't know.
I figured it was just Amazon delivery. So
That sounds could
Christmas,
be.
people are ordering lots of stuff.
Santa's brown helpers.
Chad's. Oh, I see. Lightning strike vehicle where multiple items are fried. I know all about that. Chevy Silverado, man. That did get to the point where if it set a code, I just put the module in. Let's see. Bob's wondering if we're going to charge him to learn. Yes. Just kidding. He's
Yeah.
paraphrasing.
Hmm. Well, Steve Brotherton argued that quite a bit, because he was such an advocate for specializing. He felt like shops shouldn't charge for learning that specific model or whatever.
Yes.
Discuss making big tool. What the hell? Oh,
Purchases like an alignment machine. I
oh,
buy whatever Brin has because I know it's the best. I mean, I think first and foremost, it's hard not to go with the big names, right? But also, where are you going to get your support if you don't have a certain rep nearby, you can buy whatever is considered the best of the best, but it's relatively unsupported. Or if you know you've got somebody that's got your back nearby and will take care of issues, then you're picking something else. So,
Yeah. I
Hunter comes up all the time for good reason. But if you don't have a Hunter rep nearby, it gets really rough when you may have, John Bean or any other number. Even, Autel. Well, I guess they don't have the tire balancer and tire machines, but Coates, if you got some sort of a rep, even from the parts store, that legitimately has your back and gets stuff taken care of. How do you get away from that?
or if the rep's any good at
Right.
all. I mean, that's one of my first big scan tool purchases was Master Tech, the old handheld one. And
Nice.
at the time, I wanted a scope, and the Modus was out. The Modus was definitely a better scope than that handheld Master Tech. They have a DVOM or a graphing voltmeter, basically, is what it was, but they called it a scope. But I bought the Master Tech because the rep was Jamie Lazarus, and I knew that I would have support from Jamie, and he would. I I felt confident I would learn some things from him. So
The
it was a
Master
great.
Tech was a pretty badass scan tool.
Yeah.
I mean, when it came down to brass tacks, you're also doing programming, at least on GM, Honda, Toyota,
Yeah.
the factory level. If you got the cards and well, you didn't need cartridges so much, but the cards, you had factory level, and it was essentially a Tech One for GM.
But the other part of this question, I think, you spoke to notoriety, I guess, and you spoke to support. Um, but I think being participating in networks is huge. Before, I mean, and there was IETN and Diag.net, and then there's obviously Facebook groups, but being able to leverage other people's experience is huge when it comes to things, making big purchase decisions like that.
Yeah, and people have personal preference. What did they start out using? What have they used in the past?
Yeah,
You
when you're
know,
reading forums, you have to kind of learn how to read between the lines, kind of recognize the bias, I guess, too.
and then very pertinent question here, aimed at Brin of all people. How did you meet all the people you know and form great relationships you have with them? I know the answer. It's bribery, but go ahead.
No, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm lucky to be here, that's for sure. I mean, all joking aside, not all seriousness aside. uh, I mean, I will take the quick moment and just thank some people for um, opening up the doors to the automotive industry. Travis Tamenin, I hired here early on, not long after we opened, and I wish I could have him back, but he's got, you know, anyways, that's not. Travis really very involved with IATN back when I was on IATN, but not involved. He knew a lot of people. Um, I invited him to go to Vision. Actually, helped him go to Vision with us the first time. Not the first time I went, but one of the first times. I think he told me about Vision. So and everybody, it's like a ripple effect. Everybody that Travis introduces me to, then I get to befriend these awesome people, and they introduce me to the other awesome people. And with regard to having great relationships, I try not to be an asshole. I try not to show my real true side, I guess.
Who do you do this for? No. Well, first of all, Brin's the best. That is all kidding aside. That is the darn truth. You're heavily involved. Like you get involved in a lot of different things, associations, events, working with hosting events, going to events. you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. And because of that, along with, I guess, you're just really genuine. And I think people are attracted to genuine people. And that's why you've built up this cult follow. I mean, this friends group that you have. And yeah, I just hang out with you because I want to be like you. Doesn't work. This osmosis stuff doesn't work.
Some dust in here. This dust down here.
It's those glasses of like focus the light in really intensely and it's burning. So it's almost like ants, only it's your eyes.
I'd say you're doing a good job yourself, Tanner. Um, no, it's great. I mean, everybody on here knows I'm speaking to the choir, but once you get to know really awesome, involved, passionate people, uh, yeah, I owe my passion for the industry to most of you. So thank you guys.
Carlos is angling for a raise. Smart
I'm
move.
telling you, man. I'm telling you.
Smart move, man.
I'll get him a burger tomorrow. Culver's.
There we go.
You still getting
She's
a salad every day from Culver's? What is it that you were getting every day there?
well, it depends on season. It's very seasonal.
Okay.
So in the summer, it was a strawberry fields, extra blue cheese. And then in the other months, the cranberry bacon blue with extra blue cheese. It's tangy.
You just go there because they know you.
Now I do, yeah. Sometimes I get free stuff, and they act like they're genuinely happy to see me, versus most other place where it's a lot of eye rolls. So
Yeah, you
I get
interact
that a
with
lot.
people. I don't interact. Carlos does too. Like Carlos goes to restaurants and he's like got the best possible smile, and they always remember Carlos and jerk face. Blue cheese for the win.
Dang right.
Come on, what else we got?
Or those nuclear wings or whatever they said were so hot. Brian and I, those were the best.
Nuclear
Those,
wings where?
yeah, in Buffalo, New York.
Oh,
I was there and I got a tour of Buffalo Wings, and Brian accompanied Tracy and Carm as they took us to like the birth of the Buffalo Wing, and then what they felt was the best place in town. And they were serving us like the spiciest things they had, and the first place was all right. The second place, their spicy wings, where the servers bringing it over crying, because of the spiciness of the wings, and we thought they were the best ones by far. Like we could have ate another 2-3 plates of them.
original Anchor Bar or the bar bill, he says.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I recommend
One of
going
these
there.
days, one of these days, I'll get to your status and get invited up there.
I didn't get invited. I showed up.
Is that the
Yeah,
trick?
yeah. They said don't come here, and I just showed up. And then I had Brian with, so really pity. So I got to tag along. Yep.
Brian,
That's how that
well,
works.
yeah.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sweet. Well, who paid the bill?
We ran for it. I have no idea. I think we stuck it.
Chicken wings being thrown at you on the way out.
I think we all like, oh, I'll get it. And then nobody got it. Just left.
Oh, Kevin says, what's your favorite class to teach and why? Oh, man. Whatever hands-on class you can teach. And primarily the only classes that I do some electrical hands-on, and then of course oscilloscope hands-on. But I only do oscilloscopes hands-on, I would say, thanks to Matt and the late great Harv Chan. So I started attending. You've been doing that class at Vision for what, 12, 14, 15 years probably, something like
I have
that.
no idea. That's a lot.
Well, I've been going since 2013, so it'll be 12 years, and you were doing it the first year I went there. So I've been doing it a long time. And but those classes are great because regular presentation classes are cool, but being able to see technicians actually put what they're learning to use in a live environment is just super satisfying. It's great.
I like sitting in the back and just being able to throw an opinion out once in a while. Like when Brin and Rich Falco are teaching oscilloscopes and I got to explain AC coupling. That's as good as it gets. It's not technically
uh,
teaching, but I really do enjoy hosting, if you will, tech talks. Like I really enjoy that. One, I get to razz people, and then two,
oh,
yeah. Well, I'm trying to be like you. See, I saw you take over for me one year. I had to stay home with my uh, wife while she was ill, and yeah, I mean, you just set a precedent I probably can't hope to hit, but I'm gonna
oh,
try.
please. No, that's only because you had a great lineup that year, man. But that Tech Talks was so dang fun.
Yeah.
I really appreciated the opportunity to do that twice. And thank
Yep.
you for that
Ryan
because that was
Ryan Seacrest in the
great.
building.
I guess I presented twice, but then hosted the once. I liked
Yep.
it was cool. I enjoyed that. Um,
It's also watching people get a chance to get up there. So like Tommy Oliva, I think that was one of the first times he got to present. That was amazing to watch. Like, yeah, he was really nervous, but then when he kind of got rolling, I think he kind of forgot about it,
yeah,
and you could just watch like, oh, he's got it.
yeah.
And
I think once you get like for him, he was saying once the questions started coming, he was just comfortable. And I think
yep,
whenever you stop worrying about what to say and when, and you're just kind of, which never quite happens for me, but when I've heard that when that happens, it just feels good. Um,
yep. And then you got like you, Pedro de la Torre. You just know they're the goods. You're the goods.
I just try to
Um,
make a fool out of myself, and it works.
Brian Collada, man, I thought he did great, absolutely great, and I think he does some stuff, but I don't know how much instructor led. But he did. He's in that first year. He's phenomenal, and I know he was nervous, like shaking nervous, but
Mhm.
God, he did so good. You impressed Bob Hype, dude.
No, I
That's
mean that was a big. He came up and shook my hand and said that, and I was blown away. It was pretty cool.
yeah,
Really appreciated it. Um, Tanner says, asks a good question. How do you pick what vision classes to attend? I think over time you start to learn instructors. Not to say you don't want to give new people a chance, but certainly if you once you've got an idea who's good, that's a factor. Obviously, picking subjects that you really need improvement on are a no-brainer. Um, I don't know. That's the biggest problem with going to conferences, choosing classes that you want to be
yeah,
especially early on, you want to be at more in one place at a
exactly.
time.
Yeah, when you've been going for a decade, you're kind of spoiled. You know everybody. You know what I mean? Like you just if I go to Brin Kline's class, this is what I'm going to get. A laugh a minute, and I'm going
You're
to
laughing
learn.
at me.
Well, that's beside the point. But
Did anybody take me up on there? Did anybody accept the prize of spending the day with you watching YouTube videos?
oddly enough, no. Yeah, I was waiting. Yeah,
Bob says it's
yeah,
about knowing when to leave and jump into another class. That is absolutely the truth. I mean, all jokes aside, um, I I know that people that are managing these conferences don't like that, but you've paid a lot of money. You spent a lot of time to get there. If the class is not what you thought it would be, you've given it enough time in your mind. Step up, go to the registration desk if you want to do it right. See if there's anything else open that piques your interest. Or even when you're choosing, this is what I'll do. When I'm choosing classes, I'll usually have plan A, plan B in mind. That way, if I do, I'll register for the class, but if I'm there 10, 15 minutes and it's just not what I was thinking it was going to be, I at least already have an idea of what I might want to check out. The other thing to think about when you're registering for a class, especially at conferences like Vision, register super early and register. I don't know, you guys might hate me for this, but if you're on the fence about two classes, register for the one you think's going to sell out, because you can't get back in that class if you change your mind later. The ones that
Solid
are going to sell
advice.
out are the hands-on stuff. It's always going to be going really quick because they have to limit the class size anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. And Bob brings up a really good point. Don't go to the bar right away because a class let you down. Like, don't leave that class and instead of finding a different class to jump into, go down to the bar. There's plenty of time to be at the bar, and probably for different reasons than consumption. Or if it is consumption, it's consumption of information from everybody else in the lobby. Specific, I'm speaking almost specifically of Vision just due to layout, but almost any training conference, there ends up kind of being, I don't know, the main area, the epicenter where people kind of gather, and that's where you meet people, uh, make friends, exchange numbers for texting or emails, and as much as you can learn in a classroom, you find out you kind of form a group of similarly thinking and similarly minded and skilled techs. The next thing you know, you are improving together. I think one obvious example is like the Trained by Techs group. They're all roughly the same skill level. I mean, some are in certain areas, you know what I mean? Like it's,
Yeah.
but from a 30,000-foot view, they were about the same skill level, same age group, kind of. And then they're learning. They're learning together. They're talking to each other. They're helping each other. They're pushing each other. And you just see the whole group expand their skill sets, improve their skill sets, deepen their skill sets. And then they start to become educators. Almost on a fluke, YouTube video to answer a question, but it turns into something and something valuable. And then, I mean, almost everybody in your group that I can think of off the cuff is somehow now an educator to some degree or other. And I
Certainly.
think
It's open
that's
some
it in
doors.
a
Yeah.
nutshell. Yeah. And I don't know. I'm not saying you guys all met at Vision, but that happens. You
Yeah.
you end up at the lobby after a class and somebody you were sitting next to is there and you're like, what'd you think? Or, next thing you know, you're hitting it off and they're introducing you to somebody else they met, and boom, there's 5, 6 of you now. And next thing, 2, 3 years later, you're like, I don't know what I do without these guys. And I would never be as good as I am now without them. And that's happened over and over and over and over, not just at Vision, lots of conferences. And now I would say even on social media, with the various groups that can happen, but it's tough to beat um,
It's
actual
career
interaction.
and life changing, I think.
Right.
First one I went to was Cars in Orlando, 2011 maybe, and then I heard about Vision from Travis, and so I think 2012 was when I went to Vision for the first time. But uh, I went because I won a scholarship, a technical scholarship, and Sherry called and was telling me that exact thing. Like, you're going to come here, you're going to meet people that you're going to befriend, and you're going to meet your closest friends here, lifelong relationships. That is absolutely the truth. It's not just, like you say, it's not just Vision, it's every conference you go to. And most people, some people are just outgoing and really do well in those types of situations. And there's a lot of people like myself, a little bit introverted. I would just encourage them to step out of your comfort zone just a little bit. Don't be as awkward as me about it, but try to approach people and have a conversation.
Oh, Bob, we just need to have a podcast with you, Dan, John, Ken, talk about the ride. The Chicago to Kansas City drive. That was...
You guys did talk about the ride on
a little
Remarkable
bit.
Results. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
A
a
little
pretty
bit.
good story. I think that's first time that was John Thornton, you and Bob, and was it you said Dan Baumhart?
Yep, Dan Baumhart, Ken Zanders. Yep, John
Oh, Ken
rented a
Sanders was there.
Trailblazer, and
You all fit in the Trailblazer?
this is like the EXT, so there's a third seat.
Oh,
Bob,
okay.
I don't remember, did Bob and I flip for it, or if he just offered me the shotgun. He could have offered it to me. So I sat shotgun. John drove. Ken was right behind me. Baumhart
So you
behind.
like that at meals too? Like somebody says, "I'll buy," and you're like, "Oh, okay."
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is there a better way to do that? Yeah.
But they had a tech 2 hooked up, and all John said is, don't mess with like the engine, transmission.
Yeah.
Don't mess with the accelerator pedal or anything like that. And I found that I could control power windows rather quickly. And dumb luck, I timed it really well where we were hitting bumps and Ken's window would go down. And he'd roll it back up, and then we'd hit another bump, and I'd hit it and roll it down again. And he's
That's
like,
funny.
John, I think we might have an electrical issue. And he hit another bump, window goes down, and John's like, oh man, what's going on? And then Bob realizes what's going on and says it. Slays the whole vehicle. Well, hours later, right, we're flying down the freeway. John's got her probably up against the freaking governor, and I am not doing anything. I'm just looking at data. I'm not doing anything. But the transmission makes a kind of a weird lockup thunk. Either torque converter lockup, or maybe it was a shift, but I think it was torque converter lockup. It just does something a little weird. Freaking 4 people all turn and look at me like I did it.
That's that reputation we were talking about, man.
Yeah. Yeah, the other reputation is I think Ken was having us look over a class, give him his opinions on it, and I ripped it up and threw it. I don't think I threw it out the window. That would have been illegal, but I did rip it up. This is what I think of the class. Rip.
I don't even know what to say to
that. That's why you don't give me your classes on paper. They're all digital. Can't rip them off.
What other things you like to teach?
Floor maintenance.
Hmm.
The key cutting class. I enjoyed that. I like working with Andrew Sexton, and it's just a lot of people in there. They're interested in it because it's becoming an issue, right? Keys, immobilizer. You program a lot of modules. You got to add keys, sometimes new keys, unless you get into unlocking type stuff, or virginizing, if you will. It just becomes more and more of an issue day to day, where I don't think it was such a big deal years ago, or there was ways to do it without a whole lot of investment, or if you didn't have quote unquote laser cut keys, high security keys, most people, the hardware store could cut the freaking key. In the transponder, you could program those keys with most scan tools or no scan tool required. And now it's not that way anymore.
You just like working with anybody that's willing to do the majority of the work.
That's true. Historically. Harv did all the work. And now Schotten does all the work. Sexton does all the work. Tech Talks, everybody except me does all the work. At the shop, everybody does the work. Yeah.
Well, you do pretty well for winging
I'm
it.
not sure what I do.
Well, whatever you do, you do pretty well. Because
the
I think
podcast.
I feel
Carmen
like you
Tracy
have
do all the work.
no you have no prep time. You just kind of like show up and make things happen.
All right, so there's a reason for that.
I wish my life was as easy as yours, Matt.
One is at Vision, my first ever one. I meet Harvey Chan. I also meet John Riggle. That set me down the path of the dark side. All right. And then and then I would say even my hero Scott Manna, we were talking about building classes, and I asked him, do you practice? So John Thornton is the best presenter, trainer any of us will probably ever see. And that is no BS. That's, yes, he's my friend, but I can take myself out of the equation. 100% the best you'll probably ever see. Then, Scott's in that conversation, but I'm asking him about doing this work, putting these classes together. And John practices presenting the class. Like, it's probably before he's taught the first time in front of a group, he's probably presented it a dozen times or a half a dozen times. Right?
Like in front of a mirror or something, or video.
Mirror, a wall. I think Ryan Koyman does his cats. He presents it to the cat. So I'm asking Scott, like, do you do this? Because I tried it. I felt like a numbskull, and I am a numbskull, but I just felt weird. And he's like, "Are you kidding? No, I don't do that." Oh, cool. And then John was telling me about Scott doing a class where, whatever, he got stuck in traffic, Chicagoland area. He just shows up, walks in like 30 seconds before class is supposed to start, plugs his laptop in, opens it up, fires up the PowerPoint, hits whatever time, 6 p.m., 7 p.m., whenever the class is supposed to start, and boom, goes. And I'm like, that's what I want to do without the traffic.
Is that when you made the decision that that it could be done? So that's what you decided.
I was going to will it into existence.
Man, he told me that. Thornton told me that at one of the auto mechanicas. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And so when we came to Accelerate, we were fortunate enough for him to come to our Accelerate event in Orlando. And I picked him up from the airport. And I said, we're going to take the instructors out for dinner. Love for you to join us if you can. And he's like, is that tonight or tomorrow night? Tonight. Well, tomorrow night's class, or tomorrow is class. And John does not socialize at all on the night before class because he's presenting. And I think that he does that even on classes he's taught over and over and over again. Like he's that serious about his work, and it shows for sure.
Well, and most of his classes don't stay the same over a long period of time, because if you look at, well, the handouts for sure are usually dated. The case studies themselves will be dated. And he's constantly kind of refreshing it. You know what I mean? Like, he could do a class on, well, just, I don't know, pick something out of the ether, Asian drivability. Well, maybe he taught that 5 years ago. And there's a dozen case studies. If you compare the book from 5 years ago to the one he did, we'll just say a couple weeks ago, it's probably, 8 to 10 new case studies. He probably kept a couple that are just that good. They got to stay. Doesn't matter how old they are. They're just that good. But the other ones get freshened up. And, that's
I know
a lot
he puts new case studies in them.
Yeah, there's what do you, I don't know what you want to call them. Various instructors and content providers that after classes would often go get a copy of the PowerPoint or the handout, and John would freely give this. And part of that reason was, I'm probably not going to teach this class again, or I'm going to teach it 6 more times, and then I'm never going to teach it this way again. It didn't matter. And I always thought that was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anybody that's, been fortunate enough to attend one of his classes, he makes it look easy for sure, but it's kind of, it's nice knowing that there's a ton of work that goes into that, but it's also not nice. Like
Yeah.
somebody that doesn't have that kind of time, or let's face it, dedication.
Dedication,
Yeah.
focus.
I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, crap.
Eh, you should have I would like everybody to have an appreciation for what he's sacrificed to provide the level of content and the sheer volume of that level of content to us. If you ever get a chance to meet his wife, thank her too,
Hmm.
because she gifted him to us. You know what I mean? Like allowed him that latitude to do that, and I'll forever be thankful. You know.
Huh, for sure. Tanner brought up a good point. It's not really a good. It's. I don't think he meant it as a point, but I think I'd like to use it as a point. He says it's easier to do that if it's one of, a class that you wrote as opposed to teaching someone else's material.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I've done both. Trying to present someone else's material is definitely, um, it's definitely very challenging, at least for me. There are some people that just do an amazing job with it. I have to put a ton of prep time into teaching someone else's class. When it's your own, you live those experiences. It's not, uh, in my opinion, it's not as difficult. But I don't want to give the impression that there's no value in an instructor teaching someone else's material, because that's not the case either. There's a lot of great instructors that are teaching someone else's material, and the material is good. Um, but the benefit to that type of situation is, if you're teaching your own material, you're limited to your own experiences. If you're teaching the material that's put together by a research and development center, you can benefit from others' experience as well. And
Yep.
instructors that are doing that, they need to make sure that they can own that material. In other words, they prepare for the class, and they've learned some things in preparation for a class. Before they present it, they need to do the right thing and make sure that they test it for themselves, make sure it's going to be legit, and what they're sharing is going to be things that are going to actually help technicians in the bay. But there's benefits to both. There's certainly,
Yeah.
as far as presenting your own material, I'm definitely more comfortable, and there's less prep time for me. But I also really appreciate being able to benefit from other people's experiences as well.
I mean, there's value in both. I have a ton of respect for all of it because I can't. I am not mature enough to present other people's material. I'm just not, and that probably sounds ridiculous, but immediately I start picking it apart. And it's different when I pick my own stuff apart, but picking apart somebody else's stuff, that's, you shouldn't be doing that. It's hard to do that, but it's hard to shut off.
Yeah.
And so somebody be able to do that, to be sent, a lot of those, I mean, almost all the training entities have that, Napa, WorldPack, CTI, ATG. I'm probably forgetting important ones, but Standard Motor Products, where you have these groups that the developers are extremely bright. Standard Motor Products, you've got Jim Wilson working on this stuff, right? High level. And
Accurate, and it's going to be accurate.
yeah, he cares deeply about the accuracy and how it gets presented. Like he's got a strategy, and for the group to present that around the country, that it isn't really their material, but to present it as if it's theirs, and to be well spoken and knowledgeable enough to answer questions that's not nothing. That's a terrific value, a terrific skill and talent. And then
Absolutely.
the others that just going through the process of gathering the data, building the PowerPoint, doing the research for accuracy, maybe developing your own strategy of presenting or learning, looking into how people learn the best way to present this idea. That's worth it too. I mean, that's worth a lot. That's a extreme talent. Takes a lot of focus and dedication to do that, and I think the world of that too. And then there's others that just seemingly do it all,
Yeah.
like Brin Kline, which
No.
seemed like a segue, but it's true. You do it.
Well, I don't. No, stop. But one more thing. I think so. There's value in both, especially if an instructor. I think it's more challenging for an instructor teaching somebody else's material because they didn't live the experience. But it's. I think they have a responsibility to get familiar, deeply familiar with the material before they present it, and we don't. They don't always have the time to do so. So what I think the solution needs to be, and as someone who teaches for CTI, hopefully they even listen to, they're even paying attention. But
Yep.
I think the solution needs to be that you need to consider strengths. If you're not going to have a drivability tech teaching all-wheel drive technology unless they're very familiar with all-wheel drive technology. I just don't think that we should be asking instructors to teach material that they're not familiar with. Unless they have unless that's their full-time job and they have plenty of time to get very, very familiar with the subject and confident with it. I think it doesn't do anybody good to put somebody in that position.
Aaron David Marion asks if he can get signed copies of your Pico book.
First of all, I'm going to find out who gave you that Pico book, and I'm going to get my friend Matt to go take care of them.
It's like take them to Culver's? What?
Oh, yeah.
Tanner wants Ken Zanders to get some credit. Fine. Credit given. Next. No. Ken's got his hands on a lot of stuff. He's got a lot of irons in the fire, and he works very, very hard. And I kid you not, I'm not sure what kept me from hitting the floor laughing, but we're at Vision walking around the trade show together. I think it was Ken and I I don't think Bob was with, but walks up to one of the vendors and, I'm Ken Zanders. I'm with blah, blah, blah. And looking at this and then how much? And then shows whatever price. And then Ken kind of looks at him shrewdly and goes, "What are you willing to do in the name of education?" And I just thought that was hilarious. And then whatever, gave him a deal and he bought however many for his classes. I think he was still working for I don't think it was technically Delco, and I don't think it was technically Raytheon. It was whatever it was before that. Seems like it started with an M.
He said it exactly like that.
What are you willing to do in the name of education?
Interesting.
Dude,
he's a sweet
I had to
dude.
turn around and walk away so the guy didn't think he was joking because he was dead serious.
Hey Frank, Merry Christmas, man. Hey Tommy, good to see you. There was something else I just saw a minute ago.
It's probably not a chance you're going to learn anything, Tommy. Sorry. You have to aim higher. Well, okay. So D-Tech Engineering asks the pathway to trainer. Well, that's part of the reason Tech Talks exists. Was the pathway to becoming a trainer is rough because we'll just presume you're a technician and you've been to a couple of classes and you're like, hey, I see a lot of these issues and I'm capturing data. I'm storing them in PowerPoints for myself and maybe someday to make a presentation. The problem is where are you going to present it? So you submit to training conferences, you have no training experience. They've never heard of you before. And on the flip side, you might have a lot of fear about trying to present and carry the weight of a 3-4 hour class, especially with no experience. I have 3 hours to teach. Is 100 slides enough? Should I have 200? And what about class participation? Are they going to be involved? Are they going to be, bantering with me, asking questions, or am I going to have to drone on for 3 hours unchecked? And so that's a reasonable fear to have, and a lot of pressure. And
Yeah.
that's assuming they pick you. So what is the path to become a trainer? It's usually just like that, hoping to get your foot in the door somehow. Or going to a training company themselves and putting in an application and becoming a part-time trainer like that. And they usually put you through like a training of some sort of boot camp, and then they decide whether you're going to be a trainer or not. Well, the idea with Tech Talks is you don't have to carry the weight of 3 hours, 4 hours by yourself. There's going to be however many more people there, 3, 4, 5 others that maybe they got, Brin had close to an hour, mostly because he talks about himself the whole time. Just kidding. He's
My
got
freaking
legitimate
bio.
material. He had been it started out, he was born as very David Copperfield, not the magician. And but say Bren has 45 minutes legitimately. He knows it. He's practiced it. He's confident. But so and so, maybe Bob Hype's like, I don't know. I got, 15 slides of this cool problem. Well, maybe that's 30 minutes. But if he only goes 20 minutes, it's no big deal. If he ends up going 45, it's really no big deal because everybody can kind of adjust a little bit. And like Pedro had to take his wonderful 1 hour presentation and squash it down to like 10 minutes to let Bren do a game show. It was tragic. No, it was Pedro's he's great. And then that game show thing you would think would have been kind of a joke. I was worried about that because I'd seen
I'm glad you didn't tell me
not
because
because of you guys, because I had seen this class that they tried
I
to do
know
at like
you
a
told
court.
me. You
I
told
didn't tell
me.
them.
I did,
They don't know.
okay, sorry.
So I saw the court.
Well,
I
before
saw
you
this
go
class that
into
was
that,
supposed to be like a courtroom.
real
Oh, quick.
quick, you're talking about Tech
Oh, quick.
Talks being the entry to becoming a trainer. Like this is once a year. So does this mean you're willing to take it on the road?
Are you gonna do it with me?
Sure.
You're gonna do most of the work.
All right. Go
But
ahead.
yeah, but that's the point of Tech Talks. I'd seen this class that was set up like a courtroom. Terrible. They did a game show thing. You would think it'd be too much on the game show stuff and not enough actual training. No, it was the balance was perfection. It was really well done. And but yeah, otherwise what other path do we have? So yes, it's once a year, it's at Vision. Maybe maybe we have to expand that out.
Well,
Bren, do you know
truthfully,
people?
I've honest. Well, truthfully, honestly, I've helping to run the Accelerate event. The thought has crossed my mind, like, should we get Matt out here? Should we do Tech Talks? But I know it's a Vision thing. I don't want to step on Sherry's toes. But the concept is great, and to your point, it is a way to get people's feet wet without the 3 to 4 to 8 hour pressure. The other thing I could say to answer that question, though, is um, for those that are wanting to get into training, one way is just put material together for your shop. You're a technician, whatever, you're a manager, whatever you are. Why can't you put some material together and start teaching the folks at your shop? Or, you know, I think that would be a good way to kind of get started as well.
My entry into training was is almost cheating, I think, because at the time I worked for the um, largest distributor of Pico, I think, in North America, for for sure the U.S., but I think North America. And I pitched to Sherry a hands-on Pico class where I used Standard Motor Products had something they called a scope net, so you could have one vehicle that fed, I think, up to 30, but we extended it out to 40 PCs. So we had this room stuffed. Bob Hype was there, Paul Suter, Harvey Chan. So we had this room with a Ford Taurus and just stuffed full of people with their laptops and their Picos. And that was the first class I ever did. And it just became a thing, right? And then part of my job was to present Pico, not so much even at trade shows and training conferences, but also to manufacturers and stuff like that. That's kind of how I got into it. I don't know how interested I would have been otherwise. It's fun to be part of the peanut gallery. Yeah, my fear would have been material, coming up with enough material to carry 3 hours. And what do I do that would be interesting enough to sit there for 3 hours and teaching how to use a piece of equipment? Much different. For me, it's a lot easier, and I can toss in case studies and whatever, but the case studies don't necessarily carry the class.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I just feel like, I don't know, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes when experiences like that. Um, especially if you're in a position to teach at a big event, it can be a bit overwhelming sometimes.
What's your bedtime, man?
Mine?
Yeah.
I don't sleep.
Oh man, you ever thought he was Superman? He's freaking Batman. All right. we've been doing this for almost an hour and a half.
Oh, really?
Yep.
We're about to overstay our welcome, aren't we?
That started
30
five minutes in, but
oh wow, that's been a good time, no?
I really appreciate. I didn't have it. I just glanced at the clock and went, "Holy cow, Brin can talk a lot."
I mean, there's some good questions, and some of these,
Really
I
good.
think, I didn't know what to expect tonight. I really, because you're you and you don't tell me anything. Brin, just show up.
I'm gonna do. Do I really look like a guy with a plan?
If you ever have me again, I will come in with more questions. But I appreciate you guys. Some of these questions were great.
Yeah, I mean, there's more
definitely.
for next time.
Yeah,
I don't know how I can get much bigger star than Brin Kline though.
Paul Danner for sure. Carlos Minshew, John Thornton. Anybody
Man.
else? Anybody else that you can think of is a bigger star
Mr.
than me.
Mana.
Kevin Eckler, that's what I want to say. I think you have a brand new shop with a nice class, dedicated classroom. So you're talking about tour, man. I just,
Yeah.
send us an invitation. That's all I got to say.
I would do that as long as Brin does all the
Matt's,
work.
I'll carry Matt's bags for him.
I'll pack light. Yeah, thank you everybody for attending. Thank you again, Brin, for joining me. Thank you for being, fairly tolerable friend.
Thank you for being a tolerable friend.
No, thank you very much for being a very, very good friend of mine. One of my most cherished people.
I don't
on the
feel like
planet.
that when I call you. You yell at me and stuff.
I mean, it's tough love. I mean, you're just easy to take things out on. I'm sorry. Carlos and I talk about this all the time.
Do that to Carlos too, like at work. my Carlos, obviously.
That's what I was talking about.
Like,
Not
yeah, like your wife's right. You don't. Your wife is totally right about you.
well, yeah. I think I should probably thank the Aftermarket Radio Network and Carmen Tracy are behind the scenes working diligently to try to make this thing flow, which they probably gave up soon after because I threw a wrench in all of it. But
No,
yeah,
for sure.
thank you everybody for attending, and I hope you enjoy these things. Let us know if you want us to do them again. And yeah, any questions we missed, we'll try to answer the next time around.
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks again.
Yeah, if I don't get to talk to you before then, I'm sure I will. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Likewise, sir.
All right. Talk to you later.